Thank you, Marion. I guess I started my research 20 years ago. My family has been in Rochester since 1847. My great-great-grandfather was a canaler. He was actually a metal worker who made a lot of the fittings along when they enlarged the locks. And my Irish side of the family came during the Great Famine. Actually crossed the pond from Canada after being deposited there by their English landlords. And so I always thought it would be interesting to find out a little bit about when they were naturalized, when they actually became Americans and not transplanted Irishmen and transplanted Germans. In doing that, I found that the process is actually kind of complicated, at least the records are. We'll talk about why. The process is called, to become a citizen, it's called naturalization. And it's naturalization here, or Canada, or France, or just about any place you go in the world. There's a couple problems you're going to come across as you look for your naturalization records for your family, for your ancestors. And the first one is that it's entirely voluntary process. My wife's grandfather immigrated in 1907, became a citizen in 1933. So, entirely voluntary. You didn't have to become a citizen. Of course, there was lots of pluses to becoming a citizen, and one was the right to vote. Problem number two is going to be that the records from 1790 for the early part of the 20th century, a state court, and really it wasn't until the 1930s, 20s and 30s that they really started becoming just a federal process. So it was anybody, any court. The record content varies a whole lot from period to period. So this is a quote by a woman who wrote for the record. Her name is Claire Pretchell-Bluskins. And of the foreign-born persons listed in the 1890 through the 1930 census, and most of you should know or will know that you can't find too much of the 1890 census now, but 25% had not become naturalized or filed their first papers. And we'll talk about first papers and second papers and what that actually means. So it's basically a two-step process. They first filed what is known after you lived in the United States for no less than 2 years. Next, you had to wait for no less than 3 years after that, and you could file what's known as the petition for naturalization. And that's where, after that petition is filed, that's where you actually become a citizen. The declaration, and this is something you need to know, the declaration of intent and the petition for citizenship did not have to be filed in the same court, or for that matter, even the same state. My great-great-granduncle, Pierre, he was also known as Peter Spaker, filed this declaration of intent in Monroe County, New York in 1853. He filed this petition for citizenship in San Francisco, California in 1867. So there's 14 years difference there between. So just because you had to wait 3 years, a lot of people went many more than that before they actually filed their petition for citizenship. In general, the declaration of intent and and that also known by many immigrants as their first papers, contains the most genealogical useful information. It may contain the immigrant's town of birth, their date of arrival in the U.S., their age. It may also contain nothing more than their name and the sovereign whom they owe allegiance to at the time and the date it was filed, which is a beginning. It's going to have other things on it, like a document number, and you're going to use that number to find additional records. This is a typical 19th century declaration of intent. It happens to be from my great-great-grandfather, Edward Dorn. It was filed here in the city of Rochester. It gives his birth date as the 2nd of February, 1838, September 1850. I know he did not come through New York City, as many immigrants do. I later learned that he came through, was shipped from Dublin to Canada, and there is no actual entrance record for him into the United States. He came across Lake Ontario from Canada until much later in the 18th or 19th century. It says he owes allegiance to the Queen of Great Britain, and here is something that I value most from these records. This is the man's actual signature down there. Couldn't write very well, but that's his signature. I followed that signature in documents for the remainder of the time that his life was documented. And it also says it was written before him, before the clerk of the court, in this case, on the 27th of October, 1860. Well, gee, why 1860? Edward later volunteered to serve the American cause, the Northern cause, in the Civil War. So he wanted to become a citizen before that. By contrast, here's another declaration of intent. Nice fancy logo up there at the top. This one actually appears to be brought into Monroe County from New York City. So it's possible the immigrant got this right off as he got off the boat, kept it, and filed it when he got here. This is for Carl Sankpia. He has no date of birth on there that I saw. There's a sworn date when it was filed in 1894 down at the bottom, and that he is intending to become a citizen, but not even the sovereign is listed on this particular record. So again, as I said, the records are going to vary greatly. He later you learn his age now at being 27 in 1900, that he's a tailor. That's always good information to know. And it even gives an address for him, and that's usually a rare find in immigration documents, naturalization documents before 1900. So I think by 1900 things were going to change, and you'll see how much they change in just a bit.